Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that? That is definitely you should put that in chat, Jerron. Um, something that is impeding. You said progress, correct?
Correct.
Anybody else want to add to that? Just so that we can all understand and be on the same platform of what we see um, as a bottleneck. Because again, what I'm asking you is that let's define it first, and then based on your definition, I want to know what a bottleneck is currently at your congregation. I would add, if no one else wants to add anything, I would say that it is congestion and restriction. That it is a congestion or a restriction. That's what I'll add to that definition.
I can provide you a real life example of something that recently happened in our church that I would actually love advice on.
Sure.
And it's now even caused us to have a leadership meeting about the dynamics of leadership. Because one of the things, and I don't know if this is prevalent in you guys' church, but one of the things that I see as a bottleneck sometimes is leadership in the micromanagement of the church. I think that there
Right.
are definitely levels to authority, and I think that there are definitely things that are appropriate to be determined at the leadership level first before communicated to the church, but not everything. And this week, in our monthly Saturday meeting, the objective of that meeting, and I'll continue to make sure that they know, it's not a brothers meeting, it's not Brother Bowie's meeting, it is a church meeting so that the church comes together and discuss the activity that involves the collective church. There is an agenda sent out beforehand so that we know that this is appropriate content for them.
Right.
Oftentimes, what my leadership team will do is that we will catch momentum and something will happen, and leadership will say, leadership needs to have a meeting about this. And really, what just blew my mind is I'm like, we're at a Saturday meeting about activities of the church. And leadership is now slowing activity down to call another meeting for us to talk, us 4, 5, 6 brothers, to have a conversation about what we can clearly talk about right now. It is not sensitive, but it's a
Right.
micromanagement where my conversation with the leadership will be, we need to understand our dynamics because this seems just to be slowing things down and micromanaging it. We need to empower the church. This is church activity. It's not a financial meeting or a spiritual problem or something that we do need to discuss. This is just us constantly slowing things down because we feel we need to control everything.
Mm-hmm. And the question, and again, I think the assessment is accurate, and it shows foresight on your part to understand that it can become a bottleneck and a tie up. What do you think needs to be done to um, change that outcome from happening? What do you?
Standard operating procedure. So we don't want to just let people just run wild in the church. I get that. And I think that that's what leadership is always afraid of, that if we empower people, they may do the wrong things or do things we don't want them to do. So
Okay.
to your point, standard operating procedures, we define how things are supposed to go from a system standpoint. I brought this up in my lesson this week. Clearly, I want to get you to tape. This MP3 thing is causing a problem, but nonetheless, but also empowering them at the same time. And there does need to be a degree of trust in certain activities. Now, be candid and specific. We were talking about our community evangelism strategy by which the collective church can participate. I didn't care what it was, and they had the ideas. But as soon as we started to get momentum, leadership feels that we always need to define these things and not empower the church. I think you need to define through standard operating procedures how the church should operate, and then commit that to faithful individuals that you trust and empower and not try to control everything. So I think that there's things that brothers leadership need to be meeting with that we scared to talk about that are appropriate for leadership to meet about, not control everything that the church needs to do, because that's why the church feel like they got to wait for you to do everything.
Right. Who exactly is the wrench in that process, though? It's
The interim
obviously
evangelist?
Gates, Washington,
No, the interim, yes.
Washington. And why do you think he has assumed that posture? So none of the other brothers are doing this. It's just him.
Yes.
How
And
are
again,
you?
I don't think that I don't that I there's no I don't assume ill intent. I think that this is just what people have been conditioned to
Yeah.
think is leadership,
Hmm.
which is to make all the decisions, to control everything, and to make sure you give the approval as a sign of authority on everything that happens. But I think that it is counterproductive in certain cases.
But how are you going to navigate that situation with someone who has maybe not official, maybe not actual power, but has official power, and also is the interim minister at the time? How are you navigating that? Um, how what is your strategy for navigating that kind of situation? Because it can go awry.
Well, hey, one of the things that I'm spiritually committed to is that I would not have public disagreements. The church is here. I don't agree, but you're making this point. We're not going to be seen. We're not going to let the give the devil ground. So we don't hash things out publicly before the church. So we do have another meeting. I'm not necessarily interested. To your point, it's not just me and him. With the leadership group, the elder, the deacons, the other ministers, and I want to talk about the leadership dynamics because I want to understand if I sent out an agenda. If we sent out an agenda, we understood what that call is about, and we frequently have to take things into the back room to have leadership conversations. I need to understand those dynamics about what needs to go through our leadership formal approval and what is okay for us to talk and engage the church on. Because so often, every time we do something, we want to again micromanage everything. And I'm like, wait a second. So we can never just have one meeting with the church and give them direction. It's always let's discuss some things, come up with some things. Leadership go back and talk about it, and then we'll come back and tell y'all what y'all can do.
Is the Do you feel that the decisions that are being made amongst the brethren, even in spite of those hiccups, are leading the congregation progressively to a actual goal, or do you feel like you're making decisions but there is no momentum because of this bottleneck?
And I think that there is momentum. I think that the bottleneck just becomes our leadership approach. And again, if I'm answering your question directly and correctly, it's what we think leadership is, which is I think leadership is equipping and enabling
Yeah,
and giving directions and guidance, not again micromanagement. Everything runs through me. I will approve and oversee everything.
I agree. I mean, again, I think that our understanding of it is one thing. The execution will be the challenge. Understanding that bottleneck is one thing. Executing that and not getting fatigued by the obsessant lack of decorum structure to or following the protocol that you believe it should follow will be the thing to have to navigate at, will be the biggest thing to navigate because there will eventually become a frustration with, hey guys, I keep putting out this agenda and this is not being, we're not following the agenda at all. So what's the point of having an agenda if we're not going to follow the agenda? And if every time we have an agenda someone gets to insert their own premises inside of it, we're not necessarily meeting at all in the defined sense, because the meeting becomes disorganized the moment someone else interjects their own premise.
And thank God for the sisters. I gave the sisters a gold star publicly. I told the brothers we just got to keep working because they don't fight with the sisters. Only the brothers fight with each other. They scared of the sisters. At least at 23rd Avenue.
Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not even going to touch it. Um,
It's a dynamic that again, my number one thing, especially because again, on especially when it's so prevalent in the Black church, power struggles, clashes, superficial unity and agreement. And the one thing that I constantly have to guard against publicly is that I cannot have that be prominent amongst the church. So I have to be very tactful in how we even publicly disagree or how far I will push back on things because just we don't want to give the devil grounds and he's already utilized that tool too effectively against us at 23rd Avenue. So being tactful, being gentle, not to the point of passiveness, but making sure the dissent and the disagreement and the lack of unity amongst the brothers and how we approach the business of the church is not publicly illustrated if it can be avoided.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, that would be the hope. And I don't know if it's just the black church. I just think it's organizations that have never had a lot of structure or systems in place. They just tend to kind of do whatever is within the best interest of the culture and not what's in the best interest of the organization. So in the bottle again, so I guess you're saying that your bottleneck is leadership clarity.
Leadership dynamics and I think leadership understanding what they need to oversee and what they can empower and let that spirit run wild. I think that we are actually sometimes holding the spirit of the church back, that the church wants to move. Don't get me wrong, I understand the caution there and the risk when we just, well, again, I think that every leader wants an active church. I think that sometimes we're concerned about things going awry that we feel like we need to control it. But then I think that stifles the engagement and the innovation and the energy of the church. If everything was
And
going through leadership.
also most churches at a certain size are cautious, overly cautious.
Yeah, we
And
scared
that
everything.
it comes across in all these other permutations, but they're really just cautious because if they do something that might disturb the homeostasis of the church, it could cause people to leave, financial difficulties. So oftentimes people are leading from a place of um, well,
Being too conservative.
I would say management. They're managing the affairs and not administrating the affairs. Um, Neil, what would your bottleneck be if you had to say what it is? And James, I would love to hear what you have to say about Glass City. What's the bottleneck? Again, and I'm wanted to define this so you can hear it. A bottleneck, by definition, is a point of congestion, restriction, or limited capacity in a system and in a process that slows down or halts overall progress. So there's a couple things I want to tease out there. Is whatever you're saying is a bottleneck, has it slowed down a process or has it halted a process? Now you got to analyze this correctly, because if you misanalyze it, you can, and we talked about this, you will think that something is a bottleneck that is not the root cause, and you are only analyzing a symptom and not the actual bottleneck. That's why I'm asking each person to think clearly about what the real bottleneck is. And here's why I say that. When I was with the Midtown Church of Christ, I told them this same thing. And I told them that once people left, that was not going to change the outcome of the church's life. And what churches assume is that when these people leave or when this person is removed, the problem itself will go away. And that's assessing the bottleneck incorrectly, because normally in a church, it's not a reductionist concept to where it's a person or people. That's not normally where the bottleneck is. And the best way I could describe this is I'm stuck in traffic and I'm honking at the car in front of me, not recognizing that the reason we're stuck in traffic is about 40 cars up. Something has happened beyond my eyesight, but I'm only addressing it in the context in which I can see it or perceive it. So I want you to be able to look beyond the car that's in front of you and possibly see that the bottleneck that's at your church. And here's another thing for you to consider. If it halts multiple things, that's normally the bottleneck. Okay, I said too much. Neil, James, Jerron, go. I want to get to a solution, though. I want to give you a solution.
I think that
I probably should ask
the ultimate is, how should I put this? And overlooking of evangelism / discipleship as the reason for the church being there. And I may have contributed to that in a pastoral approach to ministry.
Okay. I'm listening. Jerron, I saw your hand. Jerron, if you want to interject, go ahead.
Oh, no, my hand wasn't up. I was sneezing.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Neil. I want to hear the rest of this.
So it's taking a minute, and the reason why I said that is because our men we're disconnected, and so I'm striving to reconnect to the mission, to being a missional. I was taken by, I am taken by a comment you made a few weeks ago. If it doesn't have anything to do with evangelism / discipleship, then what are we doing? So I find that, that's what I would say the bottleneck is. So I'm dealing with the resistance as a result of a lack of education, a lack of getting to the point where we see our reason for existence as to winning souls for Christ. I heard brother, what's his name? Preach a sermon last Sunday that really kind of resonated with me. So, but I think that's what it is. That's what I think the bottleneck is.
All right, James, go ahead.
In the same sense, can y'all hear me okay?
Sort of, kind of.
Better. In the same sense, one of the terms that I've been introduced to is the North Star. Not having a true North Star. Again, a pun to what you were talking about 2 Sunday, Mike, but not a true North Star that focuses our attention and focuses our attention on where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do. Though I may agree with Jerron talked about decision making, inadequacies and all that, it is all because that true North Star is not there. And though we may have some verbiage around something, I do not see us really honing in on that mission and driving toward it. There is no drive toward our North Star because our North Star is not existent or just not communicated effectively.
Okay, so then my question would be, in your minds, if this bottleneck, that's why I'm putting it there. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I walked into a church this week and I knew almost immediately where the bottlenecks were. And it was important for me to try to ascertain the bottlenecks to also be able to understand, if I came to this church, what would be my role and what would be my function and how to navigate in that context. And there was a need for me to understand what looked like a bottleneck but wasn't a bottleneck, and what actually was a bottleneck. And here's why I'm saying that. What if the bottleneck you're saying, and I want you to think about this, if the thing you said was your bottleneck was removed today, what would be the overall outcome? What do you, and I'm asking you that because I don't want you to misassess what the bottleneck is. And remember, as we talked about it, if you misassess the bottleneck, it's not saying you won't fix something, but you won't fix the thing that will actually cause the congestion and the restriction to be relieved. So think about it as and now I'm coming to you, Jerron, think about it as a clogged drain. If you only just pull out a couple hairs, it'll let some water by, but it will not let water flow. What is the thing that is blocking the flow from occurring? And if you stopped, if the leadership was better, if the clarity of the mission was better, would that change the outcome? If I don't know what action, what would be the overall outcome if the things that you're talking about was fixed? Would it actually result in growth? Go ahead, Jerron.
I think that it allows the flow of Acts chapter 5. There's two things it allows the church to be empowered, and it allows them to be held accountable for what it is that they've been equipped to do. And then secondly, it allows exactly what the apostles found those 7 brothers to do, which is to say, we as leaders have spiritual responsibilities. And we're not saying that these things are not important or that one is more important than the other, but there are certain things that we need to be fully committed to, and that we have the church to be able to support this other work. I think that oftentimes, especially, well, I'm only going to talk about my congregation.
Sure.
In the absence of consistent spiritual work from the leadership outside of preaching and teaching on Sundays and Wednesdays, you got nothing else to do. So you micromanage the church as opposed to letting them do what they should be equipped to do so that you can focus on what those 12 apostles said. Hey, we need to be committed to this. Our evangelical efforts, the conversion of our visitors, growing this congregation in spiritual things, evangelical work, and not micromanaging the administrative and every program and every operation of the church.
Listen to this, though, Jerron. I want you to listen because I want you to follow what I was saying. If that was fixed,
yeah,
what would be the immediate outcome in your mind? I think I know what the immediate outcome would be. I'm not sure if we're at the same immediate outcome. And please, anybody chime in here.
I think it's increased activity and accountability.
I disagree. I would say that you would then, I think you're only unclogging part of a bigger issue. But I don't think you're going to solve, when it comes to administrative movement, you want to pull the bottleneck that you'll see successive things that look like bottlenecks. What is the one thing that if you unknotted it, the whole system would coordinate? I would say that if you got the leadership to do what you're saying, I think the next problem you have successively is that you don't have membership participation, even with or without congregational alignment with leadership.
No, thank you for that, because, and this is why it's so important to me. It is the church who is coming to me and other leaders and saying, we want to do this. And I feel like I'm constantly telling them, I need to go and talk to leadership. I need to go and talk to this brother. We got to go meet with this brother, as opposed to, again, organization responsibility and saying, hey, let them go and work. The church, we're not saying, hey, let me get this done so we can get people to be engaged. I'm seeing the engagement be stifled because they got to constantly keep coming and asking us. And they're not going to go to every brother in the church. So now they got an idea. They want to know if they can do this. You got to come to me. I got to meet with leadership.
So I'm going to rework it again. Just think through what I'm saying.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I don't think you are at all. I just want you to think this through. I don't think, it's not that I don't think. I can tell you 100%. if I'll ask this question, does the church have one thing it does right now? What is the one activity that it does right now? Okay. Is there 100% participation in that activity?
No. And that's what we're working towards. That's what the Saturday meeting was about.
So even if with people coming saying, I want to do something, I want to get involved, that's more activity. We're not currently getting people active in the thing we're doing. So for me, what I'm saying is, even if we got the leadership corrected, there seems to be multiple congestion areas that are at the congregation. And here's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid running around putting out fires. I just want to put out the one. So I'm not saying that leadership isn't important. I think you've done a great assessment with looking at it. Is it the most important thing that if I fixed it would change, would immediately result in the progress of more people coming to the Lord, of the church growing? In other words, in the next 6 months, if I fix the leadership, would the church numerically grow as a benefit from it? That's my question.
And now that I see that, then no, then making sure that we're putting the effort towards mobilization of 100% of the church, that would then be the broader solution.
And I think, Jerron, the way I'm telling you to think about it that way is because most of the times your most long-term battle in ministry will be with dysfunctional leadership. But if you grow the church, you can grow the dysfunction out of it, because if the church grows, you have new men to bring in that are trained by you under the administration and leadership that you develop, under the guidance that you would have in mind. So it's not saying to discount this leadership. It's saying that, and I said this to Chauncey Thompson when he was at Midtown, and it was the only conversation I had with him. He asked me what he should do, and I said, bring souls in that building and put butts in that seat. And instead, he got into that back and forth with a leadership that was clearly, and it's not saying that leadership is important. In this chess game we're playing, when do I move that piece to deal with the leadership? Often we're moving quicker on the leadership piece instead of the part that your biggest influence is going to be with the church. So if you grow the church, more than likely the leadership will evolve, because it will grow past the leadership page.
Understood. No, thank you for that.
And
I know I got to get ready to jump in a second, but thank you for your guidance and your direction always.
It's just something to think about. Most times, ministers go into churches, and their biggest obstacle for the majority of their tenure is going to be with the leadership. But leadership, you don't need to. You have to really ask, what part of that leadership am I really about to change? And in my attempt to bring them new methods and new ideas on how we can better function ourselves, am I actually noticing a stronger resistance towards that? Well, then that might not be the area that I need to engage in. That bottleneck is not the source. It is an outgrowth. And I'll tell you what the outgrowth is. When you have smaller churches who have to then select their leadership and members, their leadership out of a smaller pool, you tend to get what you get. They're not always the most capable. So I'm just suggesting, grow the church past the growth point. It's a growth point issue. Neil, what I was suggesting for you was, is that the accurate bottleneck for your congregation? And if you did that, the same that I said to Jerron, if I did that, would it result in immediate shifting of the entire culture, and we start making forward progress?
I think it. I believe it will.
So the assessment is, if I focus on doing evangelism more,
Building the love feast culture,
correct.
and refocusing on being daily invitation carriers, in response to Matthew 28. Yeah. I may be wrong, but
I don't know. Wrong is the word. I don't know if wrong is the word here. I don't know if wrong is the word. I think every minister will have to assess in their best ability what is the thing. Again, the idea of this bottleneck that I'm talking about is really important to understand. If because again, you can say that and then spend the next 5 years pulling on it, and it aggravates you to no end, and you end up back at square one. So how am I able to assess whether or not that bottleneck I'm assessing is the actual issue, or am I misassessing what I'm seeing? Am I misassessing a bottleneck? And again, what often this is one of the ways that you can remedy a bottleneck. It's called the misleading symptoms effect. The reason why most leaders in churches will spend at least most of their ministry at the one church before they jump to another one in frustration is because they misassessed. They misassessed the bottleneck altogether. They utilized their frustration as the motivation of assessing the symptom. But oftentimes in a small organization, you could take this as a direct quote, in small organizations, there is normally a misleading of symptoms. Most small organizations can't really pinpoint what the actual symptom is or what the actual problem is. They're treating, what is it called? There are allusions to what looks like the problem. They're symptoms, but it doesn't mean that it's the actual problem. When we went to Colorado recently, my daughter was having breathing problems. She was having headache problems, and she was having allergy problems. So we gave her more asthma medicine, more sinus medicine, and told her to rest. But every day it didn't get better, because me and her mother only saw the symptoms in conjunction with the limited capacity that we could understand. So we diagnosed her with all the problems that she already had. She's an asthmatic with sinuses. What we didn't know or even give consideration is that we had just went over 5,000 feet of elevation higher than we are in Toledo.
Yeah.
And because we went to a higher level and the atmosphere had completely changed, not only was she, but everyone in our household, the symptoms we thought were just ordinary symptoms were directly related to something totally different. And once we knew it was because of elevation, and we could now treat it with the way that you're supposed to treat it, because we now understood that the symptoms that look like asthma, the symptoms that look like nasal congestion, were actually elevation issues. So this is why I say you got to be careful about these misleading symptoms that look like this. If I'd solve this, and most ministers will spend their time running around recklessly trying to solve what they think is the main problem. This is what I was trying to tell Jerron. He'll spend most of his young ministry trying to put out a fire with leadership, and he's going to get vexated by it. He doesn't think he is now because he feels that he's youthful. But as he continues to fight, what he said even yesterday, with all the things he's saying is going right with his congregation, the fact that he still is having to deal with leadership difficulty shows that there's not much going right at all. And he's not managing the right issue. So that's why I'm asking you, do you really believe? How do you know? So I'm going to just, if nobody want to add anything, I'm going to give you the way to know what the bottleneck actually is. And again, I just did this at a church in Florida and tried to help them see what their real bottleneck is. And again, that leadership was not aware of that. They were so not aware. They were good guys, but they were not aware. So the first thing is, in small organizations, the real issue is misdiagnosing this idea of busyness. And this is going to hurt the most, in my opinion. This is what's going to hurt the most. The reason why you normally can't assess the bottleneck is because you don't know how to assess real failure. That's number one. Well, the kids ministry did something, and we did this year, but the ability to discern whether it's a success or failure is fleeting within church culture, because church people tend to move on the dialysis or on the perimeter of everything is a success. And when you operate from that standpoint, then it's hard to ever address what a failure is. Not only is it hard to assess what that failure is, it is hard to do anything about that failure, except for notice that people will be, again, normally I might as well say it, don't listen to people because they are misassessing the failure as well. I'm not saying that there's not something wrong. I'm saying that they will make you think that there are more fires than there actually is. Where's the real failure at that building? We don't have the best singing at our church. Is that actually the failure, though? Again, I talked to the church that I was just at the other day. No shade on them at all. But I talked to the staff, and everything I asked them, everything I asked them about, does the church do this, or does the church handle this well? And all of it was, well, who is the point of why that is being done that way? I was just trying to get them to acknowledge where the failure was. And you will find, not just at that church, but at your church too, no one is being honest about the failure. So the bottleneck, even the preacher, the bottleneck is misdiagnosed. It's not perceived correctly. So we've got to be honest about, to some degree, the process of failures. And understanding that those, okay, so I'll leave it there. We can talk more about that next week. I would also say that the other reason why you can't manage the bottleneck or is hard to find is often hidden with small churches. And again, I want you to think about this. The things you think right now at that congregation that you believe are the reasons why that church isn't growing, trust me when I tell you, that is not the reason why that church isn't growing. If the more you can become honest with that truth, the more you will begin to open your eyes to look for what's the real issue. And in some cases, it might even be yourself. But I always can tell where a church is when the fire is everywhere else except for where the person who's diagnosing it is. I'm just saying that there's no other organization where if a person comes into an organization, when they come in, they will go, this is wrong with this organization, this is wrong, and this is wrong. But ultimately, a consultant is going to go, but all of this ultimately stems from, and there's going to be a point of where this all started. So the other thing I'll say real quick, because I want to get you out of here, because I can't stay on forever. Is that the other reason why it's hard to diagnose the bottleneck, and the reason why it's hard to see where the key factor of the issue is. It will remain. I said this to Rob literally the other day. It will remain invisible. I don't want to spend no time on this. It will remain anonymous in the church. It does not want to be found. It does not want to be discovered. It wants you to go on a wild goose chase and expend all your effort and energy in assuming that the issues that you're seeing are the real issues. It is going to tie you up in that, because the longer it can tie you up in misdiagnosing where the real problem is, you will never deal with the real issue. This is why when I left Midtown, the issue still stayed there. It didn't go away because members left. It didn't go away because we changed the billboard, the font, or none of that happened. The real issue was there from the beginning. And I was too egotistical to just sit down. And I also was just non-knowledgeable to really sit down and go, these are not the real issues. I'm being blinded. The real issue is behind all of this so-called confusion. The real issue is hiding behind this and moving it. And again, if you're not careful, you will then assess these issues as people. You will assess these issues as very minute or minor problems. None of the issues that you're looking at or assessing. So okay. Hopefully that will help. There is a tendency. The place where the real issue is the place where the most amount of failure and the most amount of lack of structure will be. So if I go to a ship and the ship is sinking, I'm not going to look at the broken mast on top of the ship to say this is why the ship is sinking. I'm not going to look at the wheel because there's a piece of the wheel broke off and say this is why the ship is sinking. It is the place where the structure is lost its integrity completely. That's where the failure is. If I go down in that ship, more than likely there are either two things that might have happened. There's 100 things we could probably come up with. There's an engine problem. If you watched any of the what is it called, Deadliest Catch, they have mechanics on standby because their ship oftentimes got stalled in the sea because there was an engine failure problem. And that guy had to know that system very well. I'm not very good at engines. Matter of fact, I'm not that very good at cars at all, or I'm not good at all. If you pointed to the carburetor, I would probably point to the fuel tank, and then that would probably not be the fuel tank. It would probably be the valve or something. I don't know nothing about that. James knows, and the reason why that's important is because James is so well gifted at understanding cars that even if he pretty much hears a sound at this point, he can diagnose where the problem is coming from. And so the place that you want to look for in your church, where the real bottleneck is hiding, is in the greatest point of lack of structure. It's where the biggest hole is. It's the biggest gap. It is structurally weak. There is no structure there at all. There's no real structure there at all. There's no formation there. There's no framing there. How can I say this? Nothing in this place where there's structural lack of integrity. Nothing can stay healthy because this is happening. And I want you to think about it. We can bring people into the church, but we can't hold them. That's not a retention problem, because then you'll sit and you'll write up your retention fix, and people still don't stay. So there's a bigger structural issue there. Does that make sense? It's not simply that we don't have a plan, because I can write you a plan, but that doesn't fix the problem. So it is the biggest place of structural lack of integrity, that the ship can't stay afloat. We're sinking, and everything is affected by it. So in the church that I was just at, there's no young people there. They've all left. There's nobody coming to Bible studies. They don't participate. Nobody really comes to the life groups. Nobody's really involved. Even the people that come to church, they're not really. So I could say all of these issues are happening, but there's a reason why it's happening that way. And it's not, again, most leaders are going to not point to themselves. They're not going to point to themselves. They're going to point to every other circumstance. Okay. Any statements or questions on that? You've got to look at where the major failure pain point of the congregation is. Where's our biggest failure? Where's the biggest failure at currently?
Mike, as you're mentioning the church in Florida and understanding some of its context, what you just described is a direct result of the split that they endured. But though when you talk about misdiagnosing, though we see what the current result is.
Yeah.
I can easily say that it was a split, and just the lack of healing and revitalization afterwards. But even in that situation, you have to look at what caused the split. So it's actually before the break point that you have to do the assessment. When you acknowledge me and cars and stuff like that, I'm in the business of troubleshooting.
Right.
You already know my whole job is about troubleshooting. So when you see me function, you see me doing that from a computer repair standpoint. You see me do that from a car standpoint. And guess what? You are seeing me do that from a church standpoint. Mm-hmm. That I'm troubleshooting what the issue is. And it's very interesting that you use that analogy today. I was on 2 calls that, even though I did not know how to fix the problem yet, it was just healthy to really trace through each individual step and component
Yeah.
Until we found where the point of breakage is, point of failure is.
Yep.
So I look at that even in what I'm doing personally at Glass City is I've told both of y'all this before that when given the opportunity, and I know we have a little issue with that. When given the opportunity, I want to go from um, from the beginning of the day throughout in somebody's experience with us, so we can see, figure out what expectations are, define, to do all of that. But it will take me as a troubleshooter to go through each and every component.
Mhm.
And guess what? And you are absolutely right. You're going to come out with a list of things. But then when you look at that full picture, you'll be able to find out what was that initial point of failure, and or what is the commonality that is causing all these things.
Yeah, and again, illustration from scripture with the whole idea of the body, that the the foot, the eye can't leave their role and leave it to someone else. There's this interconnectedness of how the body functions. So we're much like, I guess a better analogy even from that would be that ministers and church leaders are almost health practitioners in trying to assess what part of the body is actually stalled and has the injury point, and the body can't move on past that. The other thing I'll say is that, well, in the situation with Florida, they've had 3 splits, not just one. But I wouldn't say that the splits were the issue. I would say that the splits were the outcome.
No, I agree with that. I was saying that as you assess them, or as you were assessing them, um, their current picture, the current perspective of the congregation
Yeah.
is a direct result of the split.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
now, the multiple splits. But then what caused that? What was the point of failure that ultimately resulted in the split that has
Yes.
now caused this deterioration?
Yes, and again, I think that that's kind of, even if you're going to a church where there's issues of that nature or of any nature, you're assessing what these situations are so that you can navigate through that church without being over stressed about how to function and how to govern. And again, the whole point of this class is understanding that organizations at a certain level operate a certain way until they get to another place. So it's not just this. I told them the other day, it wasn't the splits. It wasn't the people who just walked away when other leaders left. The organizations at that size or that level, they act that way. And so the question really becomes for your church is it prepared to act and operate differently from its traditional way of operating? Because if it doesn't matter any of the things that we say anecdotally to fix the church. If the church chooses to still have a mentality of a small church, it just won't. It's not going to grow. It's not a what do I put in place? It's how do I get this uh, organization to stop behaving one way and get it to stop and start behaving another way, which is how I think about it. Because uh, you know you're not always going to go to a church that's already big and organized, and so you're going to be at some small churches. So sometimes you have to really understand that you're playing a much longer game. But again, the assessment by the churchman, by the leader, needs to be, what is the major point of issue here? If this gets taken care of, the other things, at least according to church growth literature, is not that those were really even problems. They will go away altogether. That's why it's so important for us to try to analyze what the real bottleneck in that church of a church is, because one wrong assumption will just lead you to trying to fix everything. Okay, let me just say one more thing. The second thing that causes people to misassess the whole idea of the bottleneck is I hate even going down this road, but it's this illusion of multitasking. What is the one thing that could be fixed today that would change the situation?
Oh, this goes back to your recommendations to just do a single ministry for the church.
Yeah, and not just
let me say this, and I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know where it fits.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that I'm being careful on not creating the notion of a silver bullet.
Yes.
So when we talk about, I agree. Where is the gas leak that has caused the fire? You got to turn that spigot off.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that, but that stops continued fire, but we still have to address the fire that's burned down half the house. So I agree too that in any church environment or any system,
yeah,
there can be multiple bottlenecks that have perpetuated because of a previous one, and get that. So again, trying to get to the root cause is always the best thing. I'm totally aligned with that. I just don't want us to do. I don't want us to get overly confident that if I fix this one thing, then everything else fixes itself.
And I would add to it that this is the real challenge, because again, the effort it's going to take just for you to try to assess and here's the bigger picture. There's no doubt that most organizations have multiple problems that have to be dealt with. There is no way that a minister, if he's going to be healthy and do a effective job over time, most ministers are already overtasking themselves, they're putting out fires, which is a pastoral preacher approach. So I'm not necessarily discounting that there are fires. I'm just trying to get you to stop the pastoral mentality where your job is, well, let me fix all of the fires, where the real goal is to move you to a more administrator, which says, what is in this process, what is the thing that will mitigate the most injury, the most injury if we stop that? And that's where the administrator will operate. The administrator minister is operating differently than the pastoral minister, because the pastoral minister is going, I put this out, now let's handle this. And by the time he knows it, the 25, 30 years of his ministry have went by. The church never grew. The church never developed. And he didn't really put out anything. It was symptomatic. Again, this is why I was telling Rob, when I was there, we fought the battle. We fought the battle of the board and got the board moved out the way and got the elders put in place. Not a single thing changed because of that. Not one thing. As a matter of fact, that one misassessment cost me what ultimately ended up putting me out that church. That one assessment of, and I'm going to be honest, I ain't going to let Rob ever get away from it. When I first was picked up by Rob and Brother Bush, James Bush, they was like, well, bro, the first thing we need to take care of is this board and this board. And that's what their assessment was. And so I became vigilant in putting out the board. That was not correct. That ended up cascading and halting the actual real progress that the church was experiencing. We could never enjoy that progress because we were fighting a unwinnable war. And this is why I'm trying to get all the ministers online to really focus on the real issue. Good leaders know how to distinguish between the small fires and the real fire. So it's not saying that there's no other fires. It's saying if you're not careful, you're going to waste the majority of your ministry unsuccessfully just doing this, patting out fires. You'll never get to the real one. It's designed to do that. It's designed to keep you preoccupied so that you can't get any real work done. And once you can handle the real fire, I'll be honest, if you can put out the real fire, it's not saying those other fires won't be there, but you will move the church to a place administratively where those fires have other organizational systems to deal with them. Right now, as it stands, the church at its size, even with, we can take any of the church, even if you got elders currently, deacons currently, they are not functional to where they will operate to put out any of them fires. You are going to ultimately be put out. So I want to operate from the standpoint where we can get the church through its major pain point so that we can grow past that point. So now, like I was telling Eastside Church in Colorado, I said, well, I guarantee you that the way you operate at 240 won't be the same way you was operating when you was 800 people. And even Eastside is only acting the way it's acting. I'm sorry, Meridian Woods is only acting the way it's acting because it's now had plus 10 years to act that way. But it was actually a 300-member church, which means it knew how to act and then forgot itself, which you have to find out, well, why is it now acting this way? So, and again, the reason why I think that happens is because a preacher and the church leaders can misdiagnose the bottleneck by just seeing, by getting themselves busy. And let's do small groups, or let's do this, let's do that, and let's also put out this fire and this fire. And it's just it's a frivolous exercise. They're going to be so mad by the time they turn around. Again, a good example is that Meridian Woods, 3 years since they had the minister they've had now, 3 years. They ain't moved a budge. Matter of fact, they lost people in 3 years since that minister been there. And then I talked to that minister, and that minister unequivocally said he don't know what he's doing. He said, I was just trying to see where I could help out. So he was doing this and this and this, but nothing got solved. Nothing was. Matter of fact, I think they baptized one person in the last 3 years, maybe. This because they was just he misdiagnosed where the issue was. But yeah, there's gonna always be fires in an organization, but how we address those fires at each level will be different because we are, as a small church, you're going to be dealing with it one way, but once you get past that small phase, amen, you shouldn't be dealing with it the same way as you was when you were under 150 people. And that's the idea, is that we start thinking and operating like we're at the next level, even though we're not at the next level. And I do think that some of the fires will dissipate because there's no longer oxygen to give life to them. Robert spoke about that Sunday. Okay. The other reason why you can't assess the bottlenecks is because too many people are wearing too many hats. The reason why that needs to be paid attention to, how many people currently at your church actually, that's why I just asked Jerron. Jerron just sat up here and just lied and told me all these happy things. He lying. I know what go on at 23rd Street. How many people are actually doing work at your church? How many people, in terms of the actual membership, are actually doing multiple tasks? More than one thing. Let's just say more than one thing. How many members are just yourself? Are you doing more than one thing at your church currently? And is there more than one person other than yourself doing more than one thing? At that point right there, your church is, you are seeing part of the bottleneck. And when so few people at your church are doing so much at your church, even though there isn't much you should be doing, but when that happens, there will be a stall. Therein lies the now. This is why I said I agree with James that there's multiple fires, but there's got to be one big one, because right now you probably could list 5 things at the church that don't have enough people working at it. That one person has been at for longer than they should have been. Those areas are not necessarily the bottleneck, but it's a sign that there's a bottleneck. When a person at your church is doing more than one thing, that's the indication that there's a bottleneck. The bottleneck is not simply we can't get people to work. The bottleneck is structural. Something at your church is deficient and dysfunctional because it can't move people into operating and managing and leading and running the church's affairs. So that's a sign of the bottleneck, of what the real bottleneck is. So number one, the failure. Where's the really big failure? If you could assess it, what is the real failure? The one that really is there. Number two is the structural integrity is damaged. There is some place, there could be multiple damages, but this part of the church is damaged. It is dilapidated. It needs to be repaired right now. In other words, if I got holes in the bucket, which hole could at least keep more water in if I stop that one? Mm-hmm. I can't stop it all, but if I stop this one, it could hold until I can get things back together. Number three, there's people wearing multiple hats. And at the point where people are wearing multiple hats, it's a sign. I can tell you that burnout is on the way. I can tell you fatigue is on the way. If it hasn't already set in, burnout, fatigue, exhaustion, exasperation, those are all the signs that the bottleneck is already there. It's not the bottleneck. It is the symptom to show you that there is a larger bottleneck. In other words, this is why I was saying what I said, all of these things that we call fires or holes in the bucket are all symptoms of a larger bottleneck. That's why I'm saying if you can stop that, you stop the others. They're just symptoms of it. People not showing up when you do these ministries is a symptom, but it is not the major issue. The bottleneck that you're dealing with is not people ain't showing up, because your remedy for it is, well, then let's not do anything else, or you try to do something and then people don't show up, so you become more frustrated. But that is exactly what that symptom was designed to do. It's not the problem. It was just a symptom. As a minister said to me the other day, if people don't show up at your church, if people don't show up in attendance, that if you get upset because people aren't showing up, then you don't know what your bottleneck is. The minister at Colorado just told me that. He told me that. He go, if you get upset because people don't show up, you don't know where your bottleneck is. And so we have to be able to look at all of these images and go, where is the root cause, the root? Where's the root cause of those three things? There's three more things, but where's the root cause of at least those three? Of the biggest, wherever the biggest failure is, it is, again, I'll tell you, just so I could close out. When I went to Lake Como, you want me to tell you what I knew their biggest failure was? And once we solved it, it was easy. It was very hard to deal with. Their biggest failure was that they had so much junk in their baptismal area that it was clear that they were not interested in baptisms. And indeed, up until that point, when we came to Lake Como, they hadn't really had any baptisms. What's crazy is that the day I got the church out and we did a spring cleaning, I wasn't even a minister then. We did spring cleaning, and I made everybody go into the men and women. We took everything out. We redid it. We painted the walls, all this. As soon as that happened, would you not believe that that's when those 25 people got baptized? 10 weeks consecutively. 10 weeks consecutively after we did that cleaning, they baptized 25 people. Now, there was another so-called problem at that time, and they had about 500 canned goods in their fellowship hall stacked up to the, I'm not lying, they probably still got it, tell you the truth. 500 canned goods was in their fellowship hall, all 10 years old. And when I tried to ask them about getting rid of that, it was almost a splitting of the church. And I knew I didn't know at the time, I know now, thinking back at it, that was not the bottleneck. And if you pull on the wrong bottleneck, you're going to cause the church confusion, split it, stuff like that. But as soon as I asked everybody to come out and do a spring cleaning and clean the baptismal rooms, everybody rallied around it. Everybody supported. And it was again, I don't know if that was the real pain point or the real bottleneck. I just know that immediately after we did it, 25 people got baptized. I mean, they just could. People started rallying and participating in the evangelism work. And we went around all Fort Worth and knocked doors, and people got baptized from that. So I think you have to be careful about analyzing what the bottleneck is, because if you're successful, you should see a very quick result. It's not going to be overnight. The result should be that hopefully you'll see people start coming back, attendance going, you'll see it happen. And it's not it's not a silver bullet, so to speak, but it is there is enough evidence in research that shows us that the biggest pain point, once it's relieved, causes there to be extreme changes in the church's health and dynamic, and we normally see growth from it. Okay, that's all. Anything else I will say I can leave. There's at least there's at least two other major constraints. And just to end this, what they say you should do, I'm reading directly from Google. What they say you should do is to, I'm going to do it if it's still up, is map out a workflow. Neil, you know what I'm talking about?
What we're trying to do right now.
I know James understands because this is what he does. And when you're writing out the workflow, what you're looking for in that workflow, you're analyzing where physical tasks are pooling together, where you're writing out where that bottleneck might occur. So if I say, I hate using this word, I hate it so bad. I hate it. Evangelism, right? This is a bad workflow, but if I'm writing out the workflow, the flow for how evangelism should happen, really, I'm writing it from the standpoint of evangelism, but the outcome should be men and women. This is stupid. I wish I had something better. Men, conversion. I'll just put conversions, right? That should be the ultimate outcome. The question becomes, what's actually standing in the way right now of conversions other than, or what physical digital tasks are being piled up in one place and can't flow towards men and women being converted? I would say getting myself involved before others. I would say that most people don't see it that way, but I would say that is the biggest bottleneck between conversions. Most people will say that it is this: training people to talk to people, right? That's what most people say. They would say that the issue is that we need somebody to come in and train people how to talk to other people. But that doesn't end up resulting in conversions. I would also say that the issue is pulled up around resources, which is both time and money. I think this is a big bottleneck of where the physical resources get pulled up. I think that most churches don't have the time, not necessarily the money, but they definitely don't have the money, but they definitely don't want to spend the time that is required to get a person converted. I would also say that the workflow is hindered because there is no one to follow up or through with people. Now, again, we're saying, why is it bottlenecking? So when we say, why is it bottlenecking, what are the things that we either don't have, or what are the things that we do have, but they're not functioning correctly, to that bottlenecks the process of someone getting to being saved? That's I'm kind of loosely doing it. I'll actually do an actual workflow chart. I know James know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about too, Neil. And I'll do a workflow chart where you can add in your own symptom. Why don't people come to our worship is another one that you could put as a bottleneck. Why don't people come to our worship service? Or you can make it even more critical than that. Why don't people watch our worship service? What is the workflow bottleneck that's keeping people from watching our worship service? So you could do it on multiple levels to find out how it should flow and why it's not flowing that way. That's the last thing I was going to say. We don't have to stop there. We can continue to work on it. But I noticed all of these bottlenecks when I was at that church in Florida. And I didn't think of it as a bad thing, because I stopped looking at churches that way. I didn't think about it as a bad thing. And I told one of the power women of the church, one of the power families, I said, I can help if you want my help. If not, I'm not coming in here to tell you what to do. I'm not coming in here to tell you what way to go, because I can't tell someone who already thinks they know what to do. But if you want my help, I can tell you where I think some of the pain points at this church are and how we could get past it. But I noticed all of them, all of the things that we talked about over the last 2 years in relational church growth are at that church. Every one of them. And you would think even at the church that I just went to in Colorado was 240 people. They have a part of it too. Maybe not as full. I'm gonna be honest. That church is at 240, so it's operating already above a church that's 200 or less. It's very clear. It's very clear. So the way they deal and look at problems and the way I have to look at problems at that church is totally different than a church that's 85 people. And it was remarkable to see the contrast. This is totally different. After you get above 150, brothers, after you get above 200, the church operates differently, really. The air is different up there. And you need to be trying to push the church to get a whiff of that oxygen up there, because it's just not the same. It's not the same at all. I really, 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 truly understand that now. Anyway, any questions about that? I wanted to talk about bottlenecks because I experienced it, but I also want to walk us through just how do I really, and you have the information on bottlenecks that I sent out, but we could go back through it and we could talk about it more. Okay, that's it. It's 8:53. Neil, Matthew 6:34 is a Hebrew song.
Whoa.
It's an idiom that was used and the word tomorrow is in the future. The word tomorrow that's used twice in that text is in the future tense. But in the Greek, to speak of a future tense in present form means that what is being spoken about doesn't exist. So when the Bible says, do not worry about tomorrow, future tense, it is indicating that tomorrow doesn't exist. And so what the text shows is that the word says in the King James Version, sufficient for the day. The word sufficiency means fit, which means that God is only giving you enough grace for the day that you're in. And it is the grace that is sufficient for whatever happens within that day. But when this day is over, that grace disappears and a new deposit of grace is given to fit the new day if it comes.
Mike, I was surprised you touched on it. And again, just looking at how, how when we listen to other people's sermons, we look at where we would have gone with certain things. And you touched it, but I know I would have spent more time, because I think spending more time on what I'm going to share that you touched would have made that point clearer. But I know your style, that you just wanted to touch it so that they could start cognitively thinking for themselves. I got that. But it was when you just talked about tomorrow, and in your sermon you mentioned the manna from heaven. That's a direct correlation with that, where they had to eat that manna for the day. It was not it was not available for the next day.
No, it would actually go bad.
Right.
Well, and it's funny because almost not almost everybody, everyone who was a student in that church, that right after the service, every one of them came up and said the same thing you said.
Right.
But again, all of that, I just did that because I studied it at night and did all of that off the cuff. That was not my original sermon. That was not the original sermon. But I thought it was interesting enough, so I was like, I'll just do this. I don't feel like that's bad of me. That's bad of me, but I didn't feel like they have had, when I listened to the preaching and what's happened there so far, I was like, oh, I don't really have to do much to show them that I can preach. So that's why I just kind of pivoted. But yeah, I could have sat there and worked that angle of that quite long. But I also their church has short worship. They have short worship, and I think I was even long for what they are. And so I was trying to be within a healthy time to where they wouldn't be upset or anything. I really appreciate that you saw that though. So yeah, that's the reason I preached from Matthew 6:36. They had given me 24 through 36, and that's just too much.
Now, where can we look at the sermon?
Just go and look up Meridian Woods. They right online. I mean, they just recently started filming again, and of course they were again to let you know how bad it is at that church. Someone already came to me and was like, "They're gonna be mad because you was on the floor instead of in the pulpit." And again, these people present themselves as a progressive church. They're not progressive at all. They're not progressive in any sense of the word. They believe they are, but their actions really contradict that belief system. And what that means is they don't know their own identity. I told the elders this. They don't know their identity. And so if they don't know it, they're not going to be able to communicate it to anyone who is in Tallahassee. They don't know. They're confused. Do we believe in instrumental music or don't we? Do we believe in women's roles or don't? You have to be very clear about that stuff. But they're more black than white, honestly.
Yeah, that was, well, the congregate, how can I say, I was surprised. Again, Neil, I have some history with this church, mainly because I lived in Tallahassee for school. So though I didn't worship there, we at least had a relationship. So I was surprised with how many black folk was mounting the podium. I was like, that's interesting. But then when I looked at the audience, it was more, what I could see was more white still.
I would say that it's 70-30, maybe even more. I mean, again, what isn't captured is the people who are up top.
Right.
Upstairs, the balcony area. Their sanctuary holds 407 people, 440, 407. So again, they used to be a large church, and they just kind of, I mean, time, pressure, they just fell off. And again, I don't think they're a bad group of people. I don't. I just think that, matter of fact, what's funny is that they probably had more visitors Sunday than they've ever had. They probably had, I mean, because two women knew my dad and my auntie from Florida. Because from Gainesville, people in Gainesville went to FAMU. So there's a bunch of FAMU alumni from my dad's generation, and they happen to they go to that church. And then I had relatives who are in the area who hadn't been to church in a while, so they were there. Then in the mezzanine, there were visitors in the top mezzanine. So they ended up having more visitors than they normally have. But they have I would call them black but not black. Because there's real black churches in Tallahassee, but Meridian Woods wouldn't be that. Meridian Woods would be black folk who actually have done a little bit better with their lives. And for some reason, they not going to Paul Russell Road or Spring Hill. So they opted to go to Meridian Woods because I don't think any of them people live in the Meridian area. Most of them live on the east, west. They don't even live on the side of town where Meridian is. So yeah, it's more black than I thought it was. I actually thought it was going to be a healthier mix, but a lot of the white folks are all really old. But there were some white visitors who came too. There was this white girl who came to the Saturday fellowship as well as to Sunday. So there was a lot of people who showed up who I know they were not expecting to show up. Anyway, they'll need a lot more work. They'll need a lot more work than Colorado. Colorado, if you go there, you pretty much, it's just different. They're at a different place. So, in a positive way. Anyway, anybody need any prayer requests? Like I said, I got an interview with Lawrence and Marta. Lawrence and Marta is dead. I'm supposed to be trying to get in touch with Shelton Gibbs to speak with him because he's working with that church right now. But they are, Lawrence and Marta's in trouble. But again, Ramon did most of that. He ran off with most of whatever the membership was left and started a new church in Dallas. How do you start a new church in Dallas? I don't understand. There's 50 million. There's 50 million in Dallas. So, Neil, I'm not sure, but it looked like Dante's going to be leaving Metropolitan.
Leaving where?
Metropolitan.
West
it is West Suburban.
West Suburban.
Yeah.
He's taking a work, right?
No, Dante ain't taking no work. Unless they giving church away for free.
Yeah, well,
he leaving West Suburban for the same reason I told him he was going to leave it when he first went there. I told him he was going to leave. I told him. Ask him if I told him. I told him that you ain't going to find nothing else. You ain't going to find nothing else over at West Suburban. It's a guarantee. That I sent my resume to them brothers. Them brothers said, don't tell him to stop sending his resume. And just to aggravate him, I sent it 3 times. I just wanted somebody to tell me no to my face, Anyway, let's pray for that brother. I'm saying let's pray. I'm saying bringing him up so we can pray for him. We ain't got to talk to him about it, but definitely.
Yeah. I ain't got nothing to say, man. I ain't got nothing to say.
It'll work out.
I know last week, just follow up, we mentioned that we were at Chipotle and we met a young lady who had watched 2819 with their baptism party, and evidently she was touched. Well, and she did show up, and we did baptize her.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
Now you just got to be like 2819.
Well, like I
just playing. I'm just playing.
She's young. She's 21.
I believe
that's that's a little challenging because we don't have any the two youngest ladies in the congregation are relocating to Las Vegas. Last Sunday was their last day. So I don't know. We're working on it. I know you're going to have some suggestions on helping her to
get some more 21-year-olds. And right now, while she's just coming in, don't try to indoctrinate her. Get her to write up a list of 20-something people that she know. Because someone coming in new like that, if you strike the iron while it's hot, you could pull 20 other people into that church through her. And again, if you don't build the church around the people who are there and build it around who's coming, like her, you again, that's not something to sniff at. That's great. Even if you're not the direct cause of it, you're the byproduct of it. You're receiving the blessing from it. And now the goal is to use her as a satellite to broadcast that church, her age group, her demographic. That's what I would do. Unquestionably so.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pray with my eyes open. Father, thank you so much for this second day of June, and it's such a blessing just to be on top soil and to witness your blessings and to witness your glory and to witness your splendor and to see how amazing you are, and you're taking care of the birds and the lilies of the field to make us confident that you will sustain and take care of us. We are unashamedly in love with you and want you to continue to parent us and steward us and use your wisdom to help us find our divine purpose for this life. We thank you for the ability to feel called and feel needed in your kingdom. Please direct our efforts to do something in your kingdom that we can be proud about, that we can feel that our lives have meant something and mattered while we have lived on this earth. But also let us get a sense that what we're doing, no matter how great it is, will bring you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I will talk to y'all on Friday. Definitely. Oh, yeah, that's right. That we can have Friday class. I'm not going anywhere. Amen. I'm not going anywhere. So
All right.
See y'all on Friday. And I will, Neil, I'm going to send you some information this tomorrow. That should help. And I'm going to send out that workflow as well and just kind of work through it let's work through it. I'll send out that work diagram. All right, I'm out. I got to go to bed. I'm just kidding. All right. Love y'all.
Much love, bro. Much love. Much appreciate.